All right, hello and welcome. So this is our first webinar in 2023. We kind of took the time off for their new year transitions and so on, and let's kind of kick it in and see what we can bring this year. Actually, I must say that the final webinar of last year turned out to be quite, well, let's say, success in a way that it gave a lot of feedback, well, and people were really grateful for these clarifications about the mimics and the activation of the eyes, and particularly this relationship between the kind of hidden things, right? So you see the hidden inversion that, strangely enough, it's the control of the eyes, which actually is the entry into the control of all of the other muscular coordination, right? So you see, like, it's a very fine topic, right? So you see that the control of the something small but quick in kind of like not delayed, right? So you see quick in terms of the quick reacting but small is actually more important than the control of the giant chunks, but at the same time, like the ones which take a big latency, the big jump, the big time to get them activated, right? So you see, that's a very interesting thing, that the control of the eyes sets the control of the legs, for example, right? So you see, while you think, wow, there's a giant legs and there's a tiny eyes, like what's the big deal there? So, and this is a type of thing that we're looking for, right? So you see how we can get into certain paradoxes, right? So you see, and not really paradoxes, but something which has been missed, and where your kind of immediate intuition is giving you well, like inaccurate representation of the reality of what's happening with your child, and certain things that you take for granted in the case of just a regular normotypical individual, then you have to be able to see them and address them specifically. So hypersensitivity is one of those issues, and I'll do the screen sharing, and as always, when we get to this type of topics, we have to first start with Mr. Google, and starting with Mr. Google, if we just type the word hypersensitivity, see, I'll do this, just real-time sensitivity. So we're going to find out hypersensitivity types, reactions, and so on, hypersensitive meaning, and what we're going to see, the word hypersensitivity reactions are actually associated more with immunology, right? So you see, and this is one of those things which we never stop getting surprised with the medical terminology. Like, there is a most general word taken by a narrow field and made into something very specific, like physical therapy, yeah? So what could be bigger and broader than physical therapy? Physical, everything physical, right? So you see non-chemical, and everything for the therapy should be under the umbrella of the physical therapy. In reality, physical therapy is a protected word with a very, very narrow meaning, with a very, very specific, like narrow line of things and actions which are going in. Same thing here. Hypersensitivity actually has been grabbed and reserved by the immunologists. So the thing that we actually deal with more is the one which goes under the label of more of the neurosensitivity, and maybe if we can rename the webinar hypersensitivity and the neurosensitivity and some future, right? So you see, this is another way of bringing it, but then even the neurosensitivity is not giving us the right thing, right? So you see, sensory processing sensitivity is a biologically based personality dimension with implication for personality, creativity, and cognition, which is kind of also taking us a bit further, but this is, it's a bit kind of bureaucratic, this definition, you know, kind of taken in a very formal language, but at the same time, I think it's a good angle, right? It's a good angle to keep in mind that the specifics of how the body, how the organism processes its immersion into their surrounding environment have a very big effect on their character, personality, behaviors, and kind of generally everyday quality of life, right? So, you know, it's to a certain extent is a banality, but it's more than that. Because, you know, it's the important thing, it's how much attention do you pay to this, and, you know, and what kind of adjustments you are ready to make for it, right? Because, you know, look, so many of you get into the mode of doing some, let's say, distant verbal communication to your child, like whether it's don't do this, or asking a child for something, or asking them not to do something, which is more, and this is done from a distance, verbally, you know, with a certain intonation into it, or it also could be the encouragement, right? So you say, oh, wow, great, fantastic, you know, so which has the best meaning into it, but it comes in the format and the package of wordings at a distance, and also with a certain tonality attached to it. And we expect that it's going to work like going to work. But we have to keep in mind that what we are sending there is going to land on a very specific landscape where there could be different kind of intensities, filters of the noise and signal, which, being biologically based, is going to be very different from child to child, and actually, you know, very different from the reaction that we typically expect from the normosensitive or the normotypical or neurotypical person. So these things they're actually very important to kind of to really integrate them into your personality, because we are a verbal, distant, visual, and so on civilization, and we are accustomed to the idea that this is how the things should be. And it's very difficult for us to kind of to reframe ourselves, and this reframing comes with, again, the same idea: cooling things down, getting closer to the child, connecting to the child, employing broader channels of communication, getting more non-verbal than verbal, right? So you see, getting greater value into silent approvals than in a loud kind of cheers and so on, or, you know, quiet expressions of the dissatisfaction versus the you know, like loud verbal announcement. So this is very important, because you see, if you think about it, this subject, this landscape at which you're contacting and connecting to your child has not one, not two, not 10, but actually thousands of interactions per day. See, I always bring this, you know, I'm always inviting you to divide your day into very simple numbers. So suppose, and I'll be very optimistic here, you've got 8 hours off, right? So you see, I'll give you 8 hours of sleep and kind of quiet time when I don't expect you to complain here, right? And say, oh, that's unrealistic. So I give you the best estimate here. So 16 hours of the remaining time. Okay, so kids go to school and so on and so on. So depending on if it's a weekend, you get the entire 16. If it's school day, let's say you get 10. But 16 hours times 60 minutes, that means that you are spending almost 1,000 minutes a day with your child. So let's say roughly you're making some sort of communication. At least, let's say, twice a minute. You know, think about it. When you are near your child and so on, are you keeping yourself quiet for this periods, or like of doing nothing for the period of 1 minute or more? Unlike, because also you see, like the child, it's either you communicating to the child or the child communicating to you and so on. So we actually can assume that every day you get 1,000 to 2,000 easily of those small communication acts. So kind of the milliscale of the communication acts. And this is very important to understand. So when we think about 1,000 interactions, that means that if we get a difference of even 1% per one little act of communication, right? So then over 1,000 interactions, you know, we can get 1,000%, which is like 10 times difference in the total outcome. I mean, it's huge, right? So you see, when there are multiple small points, their total could be very, very large because there is just a huge exposure. So that's why whether it's going towards the kind of the good side or whether it's going towards the trouble side, what we need to look at is this, like what is the total landscape of the communication that you have with your child, and what is the capacity that your child has for processing those. So you see, in that way we can say, well, okay, so this is the verbal, which is maybe 1,000. Then out of that 1,000, you have 100 of more intense, and maybe you have another 10 of even more intense, and kind of 1 or 2 of super intense communication. So the question is, what's your child processing capacity? Are you using your tools wisely? What are their kind of collateral expansions and the connections that those communications have? So this is, as a parent of a child with a special type of their neurosensitivity and neuroresponse landscape, these are the things that you have to keep in mind. And in order not to kind of overwhelm you, I would just repeat that you don't want to calculate things here, but we have two basic narratives that come from our interaction with healthy people. So we have a tendency to heat things up, whether it's via the negative communication, like blah, 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 or at the same time being like ice cold, which is also being the negative, right? Or heat them up via being too positive, like, wow, great, fantastic, repeat this, please more, and so on. So this is a tendency to do the sensory heating. And the other tendency that we have is a tendency to be too distant. All right, so you see the tendency to work at a distance and a kind of at our own level of the comfort communication, kind of implying that the child is going to adapt and adjust to us. So whilst in fact, what we need to always make this little thought that, okay, how can I get closer to a child? How can I close the gap, connect, and express things via their channels of the broader and deeper communication, which is non-verbal. So these are really two big narratives and the two big ideas on which we would always be deficient, because we have such a strong habit of those ingrained things. So we don't do this part well. So that is really the underlying narrative of understanding the value and the magnitude of those communications and how much they mean, because each of them is small, but their total exposure is very, very large. So in order to get more specific, as always in this type of webinars, we will continue to listen to Mr. Google, and when it comes further from that neurosensitivity hypothesis, so effectively what we have as the more kind of specific expression of troubles which are faced by the children with their brain injury or other type of special neurological profile or neurodiverse profile. So that is typically nowadays goes under the label of the sensory processing disorder, SPD, right? So you see, and this is where the definition states that sensory processing disorder is a condition that affects how your brain, again, the word brain there, processes sensory information, which are called stimuli. So sensory information includes things they see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and SPD can affect all of your senses or just one. So it usually means you're overly sensitive to the stimuli that other people are not. So that's kind of a typical thing, right? And here there are also further distinctions, further definitions. So we'll kind of go through them so that we just get the idea. So you see here the enthusiastic occupational therapists who give us this additional quote. And here we are, right? What is sensory processing? Is the way with which the nervous system receives sensory messages and generates them into responses. So majority of us are born with the capacity to receive sensory information and organize it effortlessly into appropriate behavioral and physiological responses. Cooking toast and so on. So you can read those things, right? So you see, that's the basic idea of sensory processes. Now, what is a sensory processing disorder? Is an ability to process information received through our senses for generating appropriate responses. The result of this is a decreased ability to respond to sensory information in order to behave in a meaningful and consistent way. And three types of sensory processing disorder, which is over responsiveness, under responsiveness, and something else which they call the sensory seeking or sensory craving, which is the problem with the control, right? So now, here we go, sensory modulation disorder. These are the children, number 3, which have intense craving of a sensory experience and actively seek this out, often in ways that aren't matched or appropriate to the environment. For example, running around during the So sensory-based disorder, dyspraxia and the postural disorder, that would be sensory-based motor disorder, and sensory discrimination disorder. This is where the child experiences difficulty distinguishing between similar sensations. They need additional time to process sensory information. So look, all this stuff is good. I mean, good in a way, it makes sense for you to do a little bit of additional kind of reading and get this part in. What does it mean? It doesn't mean that you give yourself an immediate additional diagnosis, right? And this is really one of the challenges in our field. You already have so many diagnoses, like you are afraid to read something else, because once you start reading something else, you say, oh, my child might have that, and if he might have that, then she needs another type of therapy treatment. I'd rather not even learn about all that stuff, right? So this is your natural kind of protective mechanism, and it comes from the fact that the medical profession and all sorts of it kind of manifestations, it tries to grab your attention out of your own limited sensory gate and try to drag you into certain treatments. So that's why the things receive the labels of the disorders and so on in order to be taken seriously. But I'm inviting you to study this information in a more kind of distant way and say, you know what, this is just giving me the additional opportunity to appreciate in which directions I can explore my relationship with my child. All right, because you see, this one is clearly telling you, okay, so there are several avenues: modulation, discrimination, and then the motor thing, let's say in itself. So discrimination, when you can't differentiate things which are kind of close to each other, and then things related to the modulation, that would be either you are on the side of being, well, like external world is too loud for you, right? And you try to kind of dampen it, or the other way around. So the external world is not loud enough, and then you actually try to heighten your sensitivity there. And then with this seeking or craving, this is the way how the person how the child would be kind of going towards you, right? So this is valuable. This is valuable in terms of just giving you additional clues of understanding how your child's kind of connection with the environment and with yourself works, and also, like catching certain nuances. But our main goal is to help you with figuring out the things which are somewhat paradoxical, right? So you see, that was our original thing. And for this, I will bring you here into this part, which discusses the issues of the interoception and the interoception. So we get something very tangible and something, again, which comes at the point of the immediate kind of close connection, which is going to help us a lot in understanding those things, but in a kind of, more practical way. So you see, there is one that starts with an E and another one that starts with an I, right? So interoception versus the interoception. And this is a good website, although it's kind of clogged by ads, which is called the Ask Difference. And here they bring it. So interoception is the reception of sensory stimuli from the internal organs, right? And interoception, any of the senses that detect the condition within the body. And then sensitivity to stimuli originating inside the body, and interoception is the contemporarily defined as the sense of internal state of the body. Now, the interesting thing for us, as you remember, the most kind of fundamental thing for us is to look for the things which are within our immediate reach, right? So you see, that's something which has the component of their motor, of their bodily, tangible, palpable, and so on components, right? So you see, this is what we keep in mind. And for this, right, this is really a very, very interesting thing. So I'll get back to one of my kind of favorite slides, right? So you see, this is where we look at the fascia layers. These are the muscles. They travel to the deeper fascia and the periosteum of the bone. Here is the superficial fascia, and then we get to the skin itself. Now, the big part of our entire message is that central message that we keep repeating over and over and over again is the focus on the role of the skin. That all of those things that we hear, they are completely, dramatically underappreciating the magnitude that the skin plays in all sorts of the developments, and of course in the same way in their challenges as well. Now, after yet another round, I'm finally approaching the idea of the paradoxality. So what is so interesting about the skin? On the one hand, I will even stop sharing for a while. See, on the one hand, the skin is able to perceive even the mega ultra lightest of the contacts. So you blow out your skin, you feel it. At the same time, you know, if the moisture of the air or the dryness of the air change, you feel it through the skin. Then, what else? You can detect easily the thicknesses, which are just like, you know, one page, right? So you see 1 page from 2-page thicknesses, you can easily distinguish them. So which is, you know, depending on the page, but this is like 1/10 to 1/5 of a millimeter. If we just use the American versions, that will be one, you know, what is it? An inch divided by 10? No, not even by 100. It would be 1/100 of an inch. So this is how much we can distinguish. And then at the same time, the same skin has the ability to withstand and to perceive a very intense type of their contacts, applications, rubbing, and so on and so on. And what we actually take for granted is this, that we are surrounded and we have that impact of the changing air and the kind of super sensitivity and so on. We have it all the time. So you see, we call that when the person exhibits certain particular flavors, certain particular like elements of it, like in a certain domain, you say, oh wow, he's hypersensitive there. But the question is actually the other way around. Like why we are not hypersensitive to everything. So what makes us capable of neutralizing and integrating those lightest of the touches? How we are not getting crazy? So that is a very, very important question, because in that respect, we just to understand that our system registers this all the time, but it has the capacity to sort of nullify, neutralize, put it in the background, right? So you see, kind of take it as a natural background presence of the environment. So that's a very, very important thing. It's not that there is something wrong with your child, that, you know, he's somehow being too sensitive. It's actually the other way around. It's like, it's normal to be hypersensitive. The question is that what makes it work is the presence of the neutralizing capacity with it. So what are the sources of the neutralizing capacities within the body? Because it's the neutralization, the ability to neutralize, that is the most important, right? And we are in this world, particularly in the world of the neurorehabilitation, the message is always the same. Your child is behind. Your child lacks stimulus. Your child is not fitting his age. You know, you need to do more because he's behind. But the whole idea is the opposite. The opportunity to move ahead and to be able to distinguish what we take as a special type of discrimination, special type of, you know, like specific connections and so on and so on, it's secondary, right? So it's not even secondary, it's a third level. So we always feel it, then we always neutralize it, and then on top of this, we have the ability to have some special kind of sensory identification. But if your child doesn't have this precision, doesn't have this ability to neutralize everything, doesn't have the ability to neutralize the background, that's when the issues pop up. So you see, we are not, you know, so how to say, I'm just trying to understand that if we were looking at this thing, is that it's really amazing, right? So you see, how come the same thing carries the ability to have something super, you know, like the minimum of intensities, and the intensities which would be like 1,000 times greater. So it's only possible when we are able to be aware of that 1,000 times of that super sensitivity all the time, but we are able to neutralize. So you see, kind of takes as an expected value, as an expected response, and as a normal response of the environment. So it's buffering, neutralize. That's the key thing. And the moment that your internal neutralization mechanism weakens, that's what happens. It's not whether the world suddenly kind of get wrong, or you become crazy in your brain, suddenly kind of doing some strange perceptions, right? It's your primary level of filtering. And this is a central message that I keep bringing on and on. We are blaming in this whole field, right? So you see, the whole blame goes to the brain. This brain is broken. That's why this brain is sending wrong messages. The reality is the opposite. This brain is super clever, but it's given the body that doesn't have the filters. So this brain has to learn in a very kind of intense and very urgent environment. So it has to do this quick learning and express learning and so on, and kind of get this adaptations when the basic filtering is missing. So we confuse the missing basic filtering, basic neutralization, with the wrong signals and saying we know better. We have to teach this brain to process it in a different way. We have to press that button there and kind of raise this thing here, because you see, the whole story about that, you know, sensory processing disorder would be about, okay, what kind of medication we can give to that brain to kind of suppress this and kind of elevate that. So you see that would be this particular whatever neuromediator is going to come up, and this particular neuromediator is going to go down. So it's always trying to kind of make this soup, whilst the reality is the opposite. The brain is fine, but the neutralization system is not. And then on top of this, we are actually overheating the thing heating as of the word HEAT, right? So you see heating the thing via all types of the communications, interactions, and everything that else we give to the child. Because we are coming from the world, from the environment where we all have thick, effective neutralizing buffers. So this is the part that we're missing. So we are underestimating how much buffering, how much dampening we have ourselves, and we project this on the kids and so on and so on. So this is really, the central message. And as I go back to the interoception, this is a very interesting part there, because if we start going into this in the interoception itself, so then we're going to find out that effectively this is very much the property of the skin. So so you see, the skin carries two types of capacities in it. It carries the superficial capacity, which is the perception of the lightest, slightest, and the minimal things. But you see, for example, when you get some ticklishness or whatever, so what often comes at the same time, some strange sensation in your gut, right? Like, there's some kind of whatever. Sometimes it's, of course, the sound, sometimes whatever, but it's a certain, like if you're touched in a certain way, whatever, like if the goosebumps or whatever. So you see, the goosebumps, they would also come with some strange sensations in your gut as well. So that is reminding us a very important insight from Jaap van der Waal when he was highlighting this thing, is that we have three layers, right? The important thing that we want to keep in mind is that when we're looking at the internal, external, that's called ectoderm and the derm. So, but both of them are derms, and it's important to understand that your gut is looking outside as well. So when whatever the hamburger or a nice broccoli enters your gut, the inner part of your gut is not you. It's an open space of sort, right? So if you count from the mouth all the way to the rectum, so our inner tube it's not, even though it's kind of as if it's inside, but it's not us. Us, our kind of fabric, our continuous representation and so on, that's the mesoderm, right? So you see, that's the connective tissue, that's the extracellular matrix, this is the fascia and so on. So this is us. But ecto and endo, those are simultaneously reacting external and internal membranes. And again, it's a very important thing to understand and realize. So where the sensitivity is internally, which we very often see in the kids with disabilities, right? So you see, we have digestive disorders, we have reflexes, we have all sorts of, bowel movement troubles and so on. So they are very intimately connected with the ecto. So with the tuning and calibration which we have at the level of the external skin. So external skin and the internal skin, one of the magic of this is that they kind of emerged as two parallel external membranes very, very early. So, and in that sense, the hypersensitivity, in that sense, neutralization deficit capacities could be going from endo to ecto, but on the other hand, it also going from ecto to endo. And what is our key way? Our key way is always the same. promote the depth. The more we have as the neutralizing capacity, the better. So effectively, when we are dealing with the scenarios like hypersensitivity overall, we have to look at it from this perspective. The child needs better capacity to neutralize. Because, you know, if his so-called excessive sensory presence is just the deficit of the neutralization. And one of the largest things that we're actually facing in our world is how do we manage to switch the child more and more towards the responsiveness, which would be over 3D, right? So you see, another way of putting it is that this response, which is the response of the outer membranes, both ecto and endo, this is a 2D response of surfaces. And the response of surfaces spreads through the surface. And what do we want? We want to switch points on the 2D into maximum roots at 3D. So we always come back to the same point. Deeper and deeper roots. Minimal entry, maximum distribution. Because distribution neutralizes and makes the external world kind of safe to enter. Now, what I also wanted to show is that I recently was shown a very impressive picture, which I became a mega fan of, right? So you see, that's, of course, that's, meanwhile, when I'm still looking for it, keep looking at that one. So you see, that's the picture that I'm always been a fan of. And remember, the hips, the arms, everything, right? Not only the eyes, everything that you have, 2 arms, 2 elbows, 2 hands, you know, 2 hips, 2 knees, and so on, they are dual. They come as a bi package. They are not solo. They are working together the same way. But the picture that I wanted to bring is this. This is really like, wow. I got into this, I got, you know, a person sent it to me, and I was like blown away. So let me decipher what we have here. So this guy is actually, it's a cut. See, he's standing on the cut through the soil and holding a weed. So these are the weeds. So, and you see here, if you don't see it, I will rewrite it there. This is nature. And this word here is agriculture. So now, let me ask you a question. What's the difference between ABR and the rest of the rehabilitation approaches? So we want your child to be like this weed. What the other rehabilitation approaches are? They are like this agriculture. They want to give the maximum crop, no matter what is it going to cost. But there is a key word here, which was like somewhere in the text. These cultures, they are called perennial. Right? So you see, perennial means long term, right? And these cultures are annual. They freaking die every single year. They rely on all sorts of external support, right? So you see, they require fertilizers, they require artificial seeds, they require whatever. Without them, they collapse. And even then, they are unhealthy and so on and so forth. So we want your child to grow in the dimension of this perennial limitation. But if you look at the total size, total capacity, see, when you have that little root, it's easy to squeeze and kind of show the results. Ah, wow, you know, look at this. He's already, you know, standing in the standing frame. Or, you know, let's say put him into a walker and he's already making 5 steps. So this is the curse of the rehabilitation. So that basically follows the annual model, you know, and that's what the whole thing is. You know, if a therapist tells you, guys, you see, we worked for 2 months and there was a great progress. Or maybe even for 2 years, it was a great progress. She was like, but then, something happened. She got sick. She got whatever, missed few sessions. She fell or whatever. And then everything that you've done gets wiped out. We want your child's development to be like that weed. You try to exterminate it, but it comes back. And you see, of course, somewhere in the past, right, there was a correlation between this, right? So you see that the crops with the stronger roots used to give, you know, better crops, right? But the way that the agriculture developed is basically it flips this balance and kind of starts utilizing, you know, this artificial things and so on to get the most of the performance. But the performance optimization or performance kind of push makes makes the system vulnerable, makes it kind of easy to break and so on. And of course, you know, I'm really in love with this picture because it's like so much understanding. Because, you know, when people ask like, oh, but when we are going to see visible functional results from ABR, we've been working whatever X number of hours or X number of 100 hours, and you know, like we were hoping that by that time she's going to do some whatever functional thing of this kind of what. The reality is, what we are controlling, we are feeding those roots. And frankly, that's all we know. It's up to the internal, whatever happens there under the soil, whether it decides that this root needs to go like this, needs to go like this, needs to go like that, or needs to go like that. And when is it going to start showing us the crop on top? We don't know. But we know is that if we keep feeding those roots, then the system is going to be happier and happier and happier, because those thousands of small points of interactions that are happening during the day are not going to disturb this particular person, right? So the happiness and the quality of life of your child is defined by the roots. That's what makes a child happy. But you being dependent on the external world and the idea of the crops, you know, and the medical profession is pushing you this way, saying, hey, where are your crops? We want the harvest. The school, they want the harvest. Everybody wants a harvest, because harvest is something you can brag about. something that you can compare between people. Can you compare the roots between the people? No, you can't. Can you compare the quality of life? No, you cannot. Quality of life is personal. This is across the population. So this is a very important thing, especially because you see, look, when it comes to milder kids, giving them deeper roots, really, we see with ABR, they really skyrocket, right? So you see, like Julia, Renata is with us there. It's a good example. We have a kid who had, was kind of in between, and then giving her deeper roots, she then starts shooting up with like all sorts of bushes, and the results and so on far exceeding any expectation of their particular crop. But when it comes to the kids who are at the level 4, level 5, right? So you see, for them, their life is hanging there by the thread. So you see, with this kind of micro root, they're not even rooted in life from a sensory, health-wise, and all other perspectives. So what is our greatest kind of hope and activities that we are then saying, hey, look, you are wasting, even if there is that little crop, but wasting the energy of that crop doesn't make sense. Let's give up some of this crop and get a little bit better roots. Trade the crop for the roots. Not waste an effort on this, right? Because these are the roots which are holding the person in play, kind of holding them in life and making life comfortable and enjoyable for them. So that is really the difference, and I hope that you would gradually grow to like this picture as much as I do, because it's really like every look at it is, like just it's so informative, right? And you see also, that's where they kind of, in order to show this picture, they sort of trimmed the roots a little bit, right? So you see, they trimmed the roots so to make it into this visible comparison with the agriculture thing, right? Because everybody see, like, this is the agriculture. It's amazing. But the real crop is here, right? It's just, you cannot even tell which is what. It's all spread around, like where one plant starts and the other one, when one plant finishes and the other one starts, right? And when you look at this and then you compare it with that, this is an image I want you to have, right? So you see, what is fascia? Fascia is that kind of penetrating spread which just kind of takes everything all where you cannot find the beginning and the end, and everything spreads. Everything gets neutralized there, right? And at the same time, it becomes, but this way, eventually, this becomes the soil, right? So you see, that becomes the soil from where the crops can grow, right? Because that's life underneath. That's what holds it together, makes it alive, and so on. And that's where the new things can grow and emerge. Oops. So I find this absolutely incredible, and it's just like one image, really conveys so much information and so on. So as always, I kind of drifted a bit off from my original plan, but I think that it's been helpful. And the central idea that the key challenge, if your child is stuck at the has to rely too much on the 2D interaction with the world, due to the deficit of the 3D, you are inevitably going to face the trouble with hypersensitivity of all sorts. Hypersensitivity, undersensitivity, and so on, and also what they call as a sensory processing, disorder or troubles or whatever. But the thing here is not to try to do, okay, let's leave this, let's drop that, let's try to play with the brain and cheat the brain and kind of fix the brain in order to do the proper processing, right? But actually feed the 3D system. If you maximize the 3D system, the body will happily switch off the excessive kind of participation of the 2D sensors, and at the same time it will maximize, as a win-win, the capacity to neutralize whatever comes from the already, from the minimal necessary 2D sensors. So that is, again, simple as that. We're talking about the main principles, the main ideas, the main kind of processes which drive it. So neutralizing things better internally, developing the perennial roots, not annual crops. Because again, annual crops, they die every single year or every single season. You want one child to be perennial, continuously perennial, even when the seasons change. You don't have the luxury of kind of after every annual replacing the crop there, right? So, and at the same time, when it comes to the things related to communication and so on, probably we can return at those points into this at some point under the special kind of communication type of webinar, right? So to remember, the general tendency is always the same. We are all having a tendency to overheat the interaction with the channel and undercool the interaction, and on the other hand, make it too superficial instead of making it deep enough separate. So visualize the deep roots every time you have your channel. Visualize passing the deep roots, right? So that's kind of the message for today. It's been a little bit more windy as we are opening the year, but I hope that you would find it helpful. And if we have any immediate related questions, I'll be happy to get this, to get this going. So that's kind of the part for today related to the to the sensitivities and so on, and at the same time sharing this great picture about the roots and the perennial part. So let us know if you are impressed with that, or otherwise we will be soon waving goodbye to the Facebook audiences and move on to the question and answer part with the next step.